The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast, where we explore how empathy can transform business from the inside out. I'm Tulio and my co-host here, Mike. Research shows that by 2030, just 5 years away, 1 in 5 Americans will be over the age of 65. Yet, despite advances in medicine, many people will struggle and still struggle with preventable conditions tied to aging, stress, and a hormonal imbalance. Today, we're diving into how leaders can transform not only their businesses, but entire communities by helping people live longer, healthier, and more connected lives. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Mike, please introduce our guests. We have 2 guests today.
2, yes. For our listeners who are used to seeing 1 guest, we're bringing you 2 today. And so a very important topic that our guests today, Craig Larsen, who's the co-founder and CEO of Excel Medical, as well as he's being joined by Dr. Peter Fotinos. He's the chief medical officer of the Excel Medical company. Now, the company also operates under the name Male Excel and Femme Excel brands, so you may know them by those names. And to tell you a little bit about Craig, he's got over 30 years of experience in executive leadership, including the experience of co-founding Aquesta Bank and the first cloud-based software in the U.S., which is quite acclaimed. Now, as well, he brings with him deep expertise in scaling businesses to profitability, with over a decade focused on the healthy aging market, which, as Tulio mentioned, is only getting bigger by the day. At Excel Medical, Craig leads the mission to optimize hormones and lifestyles, empowering people with proactive health solutions that promote long-term protection and vitality, which we know, who isn't seeking that, right? Now, Dr. Fotinos is globally recognized as an expert in the hormone replacement therapy, age management, and preventative medicine. And with decades of experience, he's pioneered innovative methods in hormone replacement that has improved the overall well-being of thousands of patients, which hopefully we'll get a chance to hear about some of those stories here today. And then as the chief medical officer at Excel Medical, Dr. Fotinos is committed to challenging outdated medical guidance and advancing evidence-based approaches that put patient well-being really at the head, right? That's got to come first. And so we're so happy that you're doing that work, Dr. Fotinos. Now, he's also the co-founder of the Society of Proactive Medicine and leads the clinical vision at Excel Medical, Male Excel, and Femme Excel. So with that, gentlemen, we are so happy to have you here to talk to us about this important topic. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome. Yeah. Yes, I would have to say, I will preface by saying I would not be nearly as functional without proper hormone therapy, but we can talk about that another time. Now, let's get started with you, Craig. What inspired you to enter the healthy aging space and co-founding Excel Medical after years of experience building businesses in banking and technology? Like, what made you go down this journey? Let's start with you.
Well, it's a great question, especially when I set out and I told myself one of the industries I would never go into would be healthcare. So I find myself here. And honestly, the big reason I'm here is because of Dr. Fotinos. I was a patient when I was running a manufacturing company at the time. And, I was late 30s, early 40s, and I just needed some help. I was getting low energy and things weren't working the way they used to. And I started seeing Dr. Fotinos because a friend of mine told me he was the best. And sure enough, I start seeing him and I get these amazing results that I just can't believe that other doctors didn't know about it. And from that experience, I did a lot of research trying to understand, well, how is this possible? This medicine's Dr. Fotinos tells me this medicine's so great, and my primary care doctor tells me Dr. Fotinos is not doing me any favors. I should go off the medicine. And so I did my own research, and sure enough, I found out Dr. Fotinos was right on the money, and this was just an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity to get other guys like me and women that were also struggling with symptoms of aging, and a way to spread the word and scale that business. And that's why I decided to come in and buy the business, and me and Dr. Fotinos became partners at that point, and start scaling that business.
Really interesting, and quite a turn of events, I'm sure. Now, Peter, maybe turning over to you. So as a physician, right, what did you see that was missing maybe in this traditional healthcare system that kind of pushed you in this direction to pioneer these new approaches to hormone replacement and even the preventative medicine?
So, it was funny. My vision, and you guys look like I'm not trying to say anything, old enough or just as old as me. When I grew up in medicine, and went to my pediatrician and did stuff, in the 80s and stuff, the experience was a lot different from what it is now. My pediatrician spent time with me, my mom, and my brother, and would ask questions and got to really know us, and got to talk to us. So what I started seeing as I went through medical school, that was shifting towards a sick care model versus a preventative model, right? There's no really incentive to prevent a disease or cure a disease. You saw it when they cured hepatitis C. They basically got this drug that stopped the disease, and they basically cut themselves at the legs, basically, and that they no longer have that need the drug to cure that disease, right? But what I saw is when I was working in urgent care early on in my career, that I felt like I was just putting Band-Aids on stuff. I wasn't really fixing anything long term, and knowing this medicine really well, understanding that prevention with this medicine, this is the missing link. You go to the doctor, they tell you to diet and exercise when you ask for prevention, but they really don't tell you anything else, right? And so typically what you'll see is a patient will go to the doctor and say, hey, what do I need to do? And they'll say diet and exercise, but they won't give you any more. What I found and I tapped in is that this is true prevention. Hormone replacement is the third leg to that stool. Because most of what we do in traditional medicine is early detection. A mammogram is not going to prevent cancer. It's going to catch it early, but it won't prevent it. That's the thing that people need to understand. And we continue to use the wrong terms for prevention versus early detection. And if you look at the whole of medicine, there is really no prevention if you look at it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So maybe like a follow-on question to that, because as you're starting to challenge perhaps some of these outdated guidelines, what has been some of the resistance perhaps that you faced maybe from patients or even the medical community, and then how did you sort of navigate that?
So the resistance is mostly going to be from other physicians and traditional doctors. A lot of it is based on how they were taught about hormones. There's kind of three ways. When I teach my providers, I kind of break it down into three things. There is a difference between synthetic hormones and bioidentical hormones. And bioidentical hormones is very simply the same structure hormone as your body. Right. The synthetics were only invented because they could patent them and make money off of them. Okay. But when I went through medical school and residency and thing, they said estrogen is estrogen, meaning whether it's synthetic estrogen or regular estradiol, which is your bioidentical estrogen, it's the same thing. The other problem is you have to navigate this part is when you look at these studies that they do on hormones, there is hormone studies that they do called interventional studies. That's where you actually give the hormone, right? There's studies that are called observational studies where, hey, what is their level and what's going on with them? And what happens with a lot of traditional medicine, they conflate the two or they confuse one for the other. So if an observational study says if a person has naturally high estrogen because they're overweight, they're going to have more risk for a heart attack. But when you look at the studies in every single study where you give estrogen in the form of estradiol, you see a reduction in heart attack. But the doctors don't see that. And this is what's very confusing. But you think about it, and I went through the same medical system as they did. They're very smart people, but it's the way our medical system is set up. It basically pounds it at us to think of it in a certain way. And if you deviate from that way, you're doing it wrong. And that's the problem with traditional medicine, is that they put you on these guidelines, set you in this particular path, and they never allow you to find alternative ways of doing things.
I got to say too, I'm sure that, society hasn't really kind of helped with wanting to go off of that beaten path, right? Because we live in such a litigious, society that you probably take on an enormous risk, right? By not following some of these well-defined practices. So
I love doctors like you. That's I'm all about doctors like you. So,
thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's talk about we're talking about building trust and connection, and you guys have done a phenomenal job at this. You support over 100,000 members, all through a telehealth platform. So we're just curious, what kind of systems or processes have you found or implemented that ensures patients feel both supported and connected in a very digital first healthcare model? What's working for your practices to create that connection? If we can hear from both of you, that'd be great. Let's start with you, Craig.
Okay. The issue with scaling this type of business, where you're going to meet with your provider every 60 days, is very challenging, because in a traditional brick and mortar setting, you can have that patient come in, and then you can have that one-on-one talk. You can read their body language. Communication's a lot easier. And the company that really sparked all of Excel Medical is a brick and mortar company called Revita. And at Revita, those patients come in and see Dr. Fotinos every 60 days. And then they even have the convenience of walking right down the hallway and doing their lab work right with our phlebotomist. So how are we going to mimic that and try to compete with that in a scalable nationwide solution where the providers are at the comfort of their house and the patients at the comfort of their house? So what we had to do was really use the advantage of digital where possible, and then meld together a physical video meeting between the provider and the patient whenever necessary. So what we did is we took that system of meeting that patient every 60 days and checking in with them on how their symptoms doing, and we digitized that such that the patient had the ability to explain everything they needed to do at the convenience of their phone. And then towards the end, let them know if they felt like they needed to reach out to their provider and have a meeting, to go ahead and schedule that. And then likewise, when the provider sees that the feedback that they got from the patient, they're able to see in there, whoa, something looks a little unusual. Let me schedule that appointment with the patient. So either side would have the ability to meet and schedule an appointment. However, majority of the time, everything's pretty standard and routine. And if that's the case, then the beauty of the system is their medications get refilled, their dosage a lot of times will go up if they need to, and that can all be done from an asynchronistic standpoint. So that was one of the big things. And then to add on to the benefit of being remote, we started our own lab, so our own blood lab. So we're able to send patients a kit to do their blood work at home and mail it back in. And that makes it a whole lot more convenient than having to run to a LabCorp or a Quest. So those are probably the main things that we did to try to really scale the business, but keep that, patient-doctor relationship, very tight.
Excellent. So I'm wondering, Dr. Fotinos, is there something else, maybe in your view that was implemented?
It was really cool. I'm not going to say he's pretty much covered everything, but I will say it was really cool how, I would come in there. Something's coming, but I'm getting some backup feed. Okay. It was really cool. I basically seeing, and I saw a lot of results when I was in Revita, and that's my brick and mortar clinic. And our original goal was to take Revita to 100 brick and mortar clinics, but that was so difficult to do. So when I came in and started seeing, so we have a proprietary symptom sheet, because if you look at this medicine, what drives how you treat a patient is based on how they feel, not what the blood work says. The blood work is a tool, but it's not the end all be all, because when in traditional medicine, that's it. If the blood work says you're normal, you're normal. They don't care. You could sit there and say my arm's falling off, and the blood work saying that you're normal, they're going to be whatever. But when we got this proprietary treatment plan or symptom sheet that we put together and got it digitized, and then I started looking at this larger group of people that we were treating, the results were astounding. It was just as good as Revita, if not better. I was like, holy crap, these people are doing phenomenal. The biggest thing that wowed me was the coverage. 100 clinics in the United States versus a digital world where you can get on the cloud and internet and talk to anybody. I mean, somebody in Alaska or even Hawaii or even, other places that you normally wouldn't be able to go, like remote places. You couldn't find a specialist probably in some small town in the Midwest, right, on hormone replacement. So that access from this technology is phenomenal, and you could reach so many people and help their suffering. That's the biggest thing. So
yeah, I love that point, right? Because it's really about the patient. It's so nice to be able to leverage technology in a way that now it sort of really benefits the patient. So maybe following up on that, because we're still talking about having trust and genuine connection, and those things are so important. And to that, consistency, right, is also this very key element to try to maintain that trust and that connection. So I'm really kind of curious, right, to have, that exists, there's got to be a certain amount of training and support that goes into this. So maybe Dr. Fotinos, how do you train and support the network of the physicians and specialists to try to maintain that consistency and quality?
So as you mentioned, we're currently putting together the Society of Proactive Medicine. And the idea with the Society of Proactive Medicine is to put guidelines in for hormone replacement, because there really is no guidelines for hormone replacement as it relates to prevention and improving symptoms. Most of what you'll see with the Endocrine Society and the American Urological Society, you'll see it's based off of guidelines for treating disease or outdated type guidelines. Okay. Yeah. And one of my actual mentor, Dr. Rose, said guidelines is for people who don't know what they're doing, right? So what we do is focus on the evidence-based medicine, the peer review articles, and we put together a treatment for that. And the three things that I emphasize is that synthetics are not the same thing as bioidentical hormones. The symptoms are more important than the blood work. Although blood work is important, the symptoms are never trumped by the blood work, because ultimately, why does a patient come and see you? They come and see you because of symptoms. They don't actually know their chloride is off, right? They know that they don't feel good, right? Yeah. And then finally, again, the difference between interventional studies and studies that are observational studies. The cool thing about our program is we in-house train all the providers that come in here. Usually it takes up to 4 weeks before a provider who comes into our program is trained for 4 weeks until they actually see a patient. It's usually they see a patient first with another provider who has experience, so they can get an idea of how our methodology is. Oh, okay. And then what we do is we don't have CME, and CME is basically the medical credits. It's also CNEs, continuing medical credits. So basically, we go through WorldLink, who is the people that trained me. Dr. Rose is my mentor, and they actually give them CME that they can apply for their license. In addition, every week we have training where we either bring a topic up, a didactic lesson, or we do case studies where a provider will bring a patient, Happiness, which I love her to death. Apparently somewhere in Virginia, people are getting really messed up, and she's got the weirdest cases, and we've seen stuff like, what in the world, what are they doing to people in Virginia? But she'll bring those cases and we'll talk them out and work with them. And then the last thing we do, just to add more, is we do a biannual summit. And then Craig did some calculations and said, probably for you as a medical student, you probably get a little bit of hormones, and not even for the aspect of preventative disease.
Mhm.
We do at least 100 hours minimum a year with each of our providers with training with hormone replacement. That's with, WorldLink and the biannual summit. That doesn't really include like the training they do with one-on-one with me or Dr. Broody, who's our medical director for all of MelExcel and Excel Medical. So it is cool. I love it. I love teaching. I tell Craig, number one thing I do is like seeing patients. Number two thing I like doing is speaking and seeing and being in front of teaching providers. It's great just to break some of the myths and watch they all become enlightened that, wait a second, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. So
Wow,
Yeah,
what a discovery.
Yeah, amazing. I was also curious, like, what are you guys doing to build education with the customers too, the patients? How are you? Do you have systems in place to help them learn about things that it's like those wow moments, like I didn't even know, like because there's also the benefit of education that comes from discovering new ways or novel ways of doing things. Are you guys investing in that as well? How's that coming along?
I'll take part of it. I know if Greg might have some of but from the provider aspect, it's cool because a lot of people that come and find us, they're just tired of being put to the same run-of-the-mill kind of medicine, right? They're told there's nothing wrong with them. Some of them do a lot of great research. I love the internet. There's doctors out there probably listening to this that are going to be cringing that I like it when a patient comes to me with Google questions or they have a list of questions because it allows me a time to educate them and stuff. So our providers are our main educators for our patients. Then through systems like Craig will tell you, we have internet on our website. We have education. We link the studies. We just don't, hey, this is what you got to do. This is all you got to do, and not have the evidence for it. If you go in a court of law, you'll get booted if you don't have the evidence. It's the same thing here. So many times I've had a patient tell me, oh, my doctor said this and this, and says, well, where's the study? Can you show me the study? And they never turn around and show me the study. So why would you say that and not give evidence of why you're saying what you're saying? Just the part to let you know is I think doctors have lost what their purpose is. And I wanted to make this comment really well right now because I wanted you really to understand it. We should not be authoritarian figures. We should be servants to our patients. We are partners in their care. We should present them the information that we know and say, I think you should go this way or that way. Or I say both are good. Which way do you want to go? Because when you do that, you empower the patient. And the patient's going to be more likely to do what you're asking them to do than you sitting there writing them a prescription for something they already told you they don't want to be on. So no, we educate through our providers. We use our internet, our website presence to educate that way. I'm doing podcasts. I'm doing videos. I'm trying to get out there and talk as well. But Craig has other systems. Maybe have some other things that we do as well. So
I love that you're giving agency to the patients, which is, historically it's been like, you're right. It's been this authoritarian kind of thing. And people feel like they don't have the right to ask a question or to even question things. So giving patients agency is so important. I love that.
I'll give you an example. I had a patient come to me Monday. She flew up here, history of breast cancer. Nobody will touch her. Her niece actually is starting to train under the WorldLink training. Brought her up because she knew I treat people with breast cancer. She told her that the lady told her doctor, hey, I don't really want to do tamoxifen because I heard it's got bad effects, potentially can increase my risk for cancer after a year. And she turned around. I was like floored. She said, what, did you read that on Facebook? That's what the doctor told her. And I'm like, what? Do you not understand what you're doing in that situation? You're alienating a patient. You're minimizing the patient's knowledge and the way they talk. It is sad. It is sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it seems like in so many areas of business, feedback from the patients is critical, right, to the health of an organization. If we talk about software development or even in the work that we do as a marketing agency, we're constantly listening to our customers' feedback? What's their satisfaction, score? So that, but it just seems like you said, right, in healthcare, sometimes the medical professionals do seem to have lost their way. Maybe Tulio, if we'll come back to the other real world examples since Dr. Fotinos mentioned.
Yeah. Let's go to. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Go.
Since he mentioned the idea of purpose, right? So we're very much attuned to the importance of purpose, and maybe we can dig into that a little bit more, Dr. Fotinos, and then Craig as well. Feel free to chime in here. But here's the question, right? So what would you say is the important for our audience, right? What would you say is the importance of a well-defined purpose? And then can you tell us a little bit more about how that deeper purpose, it goes to work at Excel Medical?
So, my purpose for this is to basically get this medicine to remove the bias and the stigma that this medicine has gotten. In doing so, I also want to get it to the masses. And this is why I love Excel Medical, because it's allowed me to do that, and to make it affordable. You'll see, I take care of a lot of high net wealth people. I mean, they're high, CEOs and people that own companies and businesses and stuff like that. But I do have a few people like that will that be able to pay for, like teachers and truck drivers. Truck drivers, they make for good money, don't get me wrong. But I want to get it to everybody, because if we prevent a heart attack in the CEO and we prevent this heart attack in a teacher, for example, it's beneficial for everybody. It's less burden on the system, right? The medical system, because a lot of the treatment costs a lot of money for this stuff. If you can pay a little bit of money to prevent a lot of these diseases, you'll see these people, you'll see less and less burden on the system. That's what they forget. So my goal is to get this out, to understand we're trying to prevent disease with this. My biggest thing is people don't need to accept the decline with aging. It's this myth that we've been told that, oh, you're getting older, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's another thing that people need to understand. Whenever I hear somebody coming in, oh, my doctor told me to act my age. What does that mean? What, you got to walk around with a stroller or whatnot, and feel like you can't do anything? Not to say anything, Craig is still doing everything he wants. He is scuba diving. He's a spring chicken. Don't get me wrong, but he's he's in his 60s now, and he's still doing everything he wants to. He's traveling and he's enjoying his life. Another example would be, I had a lady that came to me and her knees were killing her. She had, and I knew exactly. I was like, that's thyroid. And her biggest mission, and it was the smallest thing ever, but for you guys, if you have grandchildren or children, you know completely what it is.
Yeah.
She wanted to run around and play with her grandchild. She came back to me after we had treated her, big smile on her face. I said, what's going on? Well, I got destroyed with, squirt guns, but I did it with my niece, my grandchildren. I was running around and playing around the house, and we were squirting each other. It was the best time ever. So tell me, is that what we want for a patient, or do we want to sit there and say, oh, you can't do that? But that's what I hear all the time from patients, that they can't do it. There's nothing we could do for you.
I got to tell you, I'll often say personally, it's been hard accepting the reality of getting older, because you realize your limitation. It's so ingrained on mindset that I actually say that to myself. And I talk about mindset all the time. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I just have the wrong doctors. You start to believe that nonsense, and you're like, I'm limited because I'm older. Well, maybe you're just limited because you're not doing the right treatments that you need to be fully.
And you think about them, their arsenal is limited, right? They're taught, hey, you can only use these pharmaceutical medicines, right? Well, why can't you use a compounded bioidentical hormone, or why can't you use a supplement? They always either denigrate it, or they say, I don't know anything about it, so it's not in my realm, so you don't need to take it, because they don't think it's going to help you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the sad thing about it. I see it day in and day out. Like I told you, most of my patients that come to me are fed up because they're not getting the answers.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them, there's really no answer for you. But if they say, hey, they're telling me I can't feel better. Well, no, that's possible,
So interesting, right? I'd be very curious in your thought on if you could go back and redo the healthcare system, like what's the one thing that you would change, or where would you start?
Well, that's probably a 2-hour conversation.
Well, I'll tell you what I would do is I would definitely, let me give you this. Rockefeller and Carnegie, through the Fleckman, they did a research article by Dr. Fleckman, and that's when we switched from alternative medicine and was all evidence-based and pharmaceutical grade type medicine. This opened the door for pharmaceutical companies to take over medicine. Basically, they didn't mean to do it. They were just trying to get a standardized medicine. And what happened was this industry came in and it destroyed a lot of these alternative medicines. Now you're starting to seeing them come back, but because people are fed up, right? So my goal would have been back then to make sure, or go back in time and tell them, hey guys, I understand what you're trying to do, but you're allowing an industry that may just promote sickness and sick care and treating disease instead of going to the root of the disease and preventing disease, and if I would have done that, maybe it would have changed their mind and say, maybe we need to do this a little bit different, and maybe we'd be different right now. So
that's an incredible mindset. Yeah. And so true, right? Because it may take the pendulum time to swing, but it always swings back. So maybe it is that the pendulum is swinging back, hopefully.
Craig, let's hear from you a little bit as an entrepreneur. I mean, this is such a impactful thing you guys are doing. How does that tie into your bigger purpose as an entrepreneur? What kind of legacy are you trying to leave behind? Are you wanting to redefine the entire healthcare system, just the aging system in America? What's like the bigger mission here?
Well, it really started.
You ask really easy questions here, Greg.
Well, after I fix world peace, then I think I would. No, but so it's interesting. It started for me as just a way that I saw it was working for me, and now that I've been into this industry 18 years, it's definitely more about helping others and having them, receive the same benefits that I've received and even better. And when you're talking about purpose and I know this shows a lot about community and compassion, we're not selling people washing machines. We're dealing with people's health, which is very, very personal. And when things don't go right, they take a different approach when things aren't going right versus their washing machine's not working the way it should. So we really got to put together a whole community around that. And a lot of that starts obviously with the provider, but there's multiple layers behind that, like the medical liaisons that we have, we just believe are world-class. And, for example, we've discovered that position, which is a medical assistant, they really don't make that much money. And most of these guys are working 2 jobs at a time. And it's difficult when you see somebody so passionate and such an impact on a patient's life that they got to work 2 jobs. So we made a conscious decision to go to the top of the pay grade for those positions. And, I feel like it's made a big difference. Most of those MLs now only have 1 job. They get to go back to their families and, spend time with them. They're coming in fresh rather than having to work 2 jobs. And that's real important because you're asking earlier, what do we do to communicate all these things? And a lot of the communication is always on a personal level. So they'll reach out to their medical liaison or their provider, and those will be the ones that will talk to them specifically about their issues. And so, our legacy is hopefully that we're building a system that's going to last for a long time and serve a lot of patients.
That's beautiful. I hope more and more leaders do that. Recently I heard that Bank of America, I think they've implemented a minimum of $25 an hour anywhere in the country for for even the base employee. And I was like, you know what? Some people in some parts of the country can actually live with that. So we need to see more of that. It's good to see that. Let's go into a question from an audience, which I think speaks to the mindset is often that you can't build community and connection, even with your employees, unless you're in an office somewhere. And this is a great question, as I think we can learn a lot from what you guys are doing. And the question here is, how do leaders at Excel create connection when their teams are hybrid or fully remote? How do you guys do it? You touched on it a little bit, but if you had to give it a 1, 2, 3 formula, what would that be?
Well,
You want me to start with the? Go ahead. You want to go, Craig, or you want me to start with the providers?
I do want to say the hybrid and the fully remote, man, it's difficult from the standpoint that a lot of the camaraderie that we get within the office is just people, going around talking to each other and asking how their day was. And it's a lot easier to do that, when you're not actively having to make that outbound call to find out. So one of the things we do is we always try to incorporate the remote workers with whatever we're doing internally. So we'll do a town hall every month, and we've had to adjust that many times to try to make sure that the experience for the remote workers are just as good as the ones that are here. And then we, especially on our providers, we've scheduled a lot of their education by coming in towards the office. And like this December, we have them come in so we can do a Christmas and holiday party just for everybody, and fly them all in to make sure that they create that bond. So it's those types of things. I think the biggest part of it is being aware that the remote workers, are at a disadvantage, and trying to always figure out how to compensate for that.
Yeah. Dr. Fotinos, if you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, he summed it up real nicely. It's funny. Every time we meet with these summits with the providers, because that's usually the only time they really know each other. Some of them live in the same state, some live in the same city, so they do spend some time outside with each other. But it's cool because they always say this, and they said, you know what, I feel like I've known you all forever when they meet each other for the first time, because they interact so much together. A lot of the ones that have been around for a long time, I can't answer all the questions because there's a lot of questions when it comes to stuff. They'll come in and pipe in and talk to them and give them the support that they need regarding, any questions related to patients and stuff. So, but it feels like they've known each other for forever is what I always hear. I feel like I've known you forever kind of thing. And they get along. It's great. There is no drama between them, which is phenomenal. I feel like, it's a different thing, and I would agree with Craig. It is difficult because they're not really here to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can get them on the phone real quick, or I can get them on the computer and talk to them. So being able to access that with the technology that we have, it helps it too. So
nice. All right, that brings us to the final segment here and final question, which is a good lead in the conversation we just had. In fact, the Harvard Business School study found that compassionate leaders create 41% higher customer satisfaction. And so the big question we ask all of our guests, how has love or compassion and empathy shown up in your leadership at Excel Medical? How important do you feel love is in business?
Craig, can I do this one real quick? Just to let you know, because this has impacted me personally.
Sure.
So when I first started out doing this, and Craig came in, I was not the best person. I would, to be honest with you, I would probably be very short with my staff, and I would keep my standard with the staff. And Craig pulled me aside and gave me a lot of pointers and stuff. And what's happened is I've learned over time, and especially with my patients, when you have the compassion for your patients, that should translate to everybody, and it shouldn't just be just for your patients, if that makes sense. And it was a growth experience for me. And I learned real quick that when you show the same compassion you show for your patients to your staff that works for you, it makes life a whole lot easier. But it also, you start learning about people that they open up to you about things that they normally would never do, right? And it allows you to coach them in specific directions. So what's happened because of Craig's compassion for me and knowing that I was not doing as good as I should have done early on in my career, he's basically taught me how to do the same thing with my subordinates and even in people at the same level, me and above. So it's kind of that compassion and love, which we use the term agape in Greek, which I said, it can be a teaching tool as well. You can teach with love, and that's what kind of Craig did. And I really, and I wanted to tell them this, I really appreciate him for sticking with me and helping me be compassionate, not only to my patients, which I always did, but also not to turn it off or on, to keep it always on when you're with your staff and people that are just working with you. So
that's the best testimonial I've ever heard for a leader, Craig. I mean, you're getting a live testimony right there.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I'm glad it's taped. No,
it's court of law. My wife's a lawyer for Bank of America, so when you said Bank of America, I was like, "Hey, my wife works for Bank of America," and so she's a lawyer. She'd be like, "Yeah, it's taped now. You can't take it back."
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So go ahead, Craig. I'll let you finish if you want.
I don't know how much time we got, but if I have time for a quick story,
as much time as you need.
Okay. This actually, it probably affected my life more than one of our employees. And I really haven't told this story publicly before, but when you start out as a small company, you know everybody, and you get to ask them how their weekend was and all those things. And then as you grow, two kind of negative things happen. Number one, you don't have that ability to have that connection and really understand the employees. But number two, you also start scaling your business and you get bigger and you put departments in and you have HR, and there's certain ways to do things and other ways not to do it. Well, we had an event after work one time, and I had, one of the MLs that we talked about earlier, that at that point they really weren't making a lot of money. And the ML said to me, "Hey, I didn't know if you could help me out. I'm living in my car half the week because me and my husband, we just moved here and we didn't have, any family, and we didn't have a job, and, it's just taking us a difficult time. And there were some reasons why she couldn't get an apartment." And I went to our HR department with that because I thought that's what I needed to do. And, and I handed it off to them, and I just kind of moved on. And about a month later, it just was eating me up inside. And I was like, I wonder what happened. Where did this end up? So it was a Sunday, and I called her and I said, "Hey, what happened with your situation? Did we help you out?" And she told me that unfortunately we weren't able to, and that was okay. And I said, "Well, are you living anywhere?" And she was still kind of staying at short-term housing or staying in her car occasionally. And I didn't want anybody in the company to know. I didn't want any of the employees to know. I just told her to come live with me. So she stayed at my house, and it worked out perfectly. She got back on her feet. Her husband got another job, and it was great. So that, I guess, talking about love and compassion, and it really touched me, I'm sure, way more than it did her.
Yeah. Wow. What a conscious decision, and a great example of a conscious leader. So thank you for sharing that story, Craig. So, now that we've come kind of, towards the end of our show, we always, we get questions from the audience, like, how can we follow back up with our guests? Where can we learn a little bit more? So where can our listeners go to learn a little bit more about Excel Medical and connect further with the two of you?
So for the male patients, we have maleexcel.com. And for the female patients, it's Femexcel, FEMEXCEL.com. And just go there. You'll learn a lot about hormone replacement, and you can decide if it's right for you.
Well, it's been great having you, and thank both of you for joining us. So if today's conversation inspired you to think differently about health, connection, and community, please share this episode with someone you think you would benefit from it, and like it, subscribe, and please tune in again when we come back on the next Bliss Business Podcast. Thanks for joining us.